Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld again. Thanks for stopping by, and just remember, if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, feel free to take a look at some of my other BF4 videos if you like. You can find them all in a playlist in the description down below. But anyway, today we're going to be taking a look at another theme loadout for BF4, this time inspired by the CIA SOG. And this idea was suggested by YMGZK15 in the comments of my last episode, so thanks for the idea, man, and I hope I do it justice for you. If any of you other guys have a theme you'd like me to check out, then feel free to leave it in the comments section below. But just remember, I don't have time to make a video on every single loadout, so make sure you come up with something fun and unique, and I'll do my best to give it a go. Now, to kick off, to give you an idea on what the CIA's SOG, or Special Operations Group, is all about, well, have a think about what you think is the most elite US military unit. And if you immediately thought of Delta Force or DevGru, then you'd be on the right track. But what if I told you that SOG is made up of operators from both of these units? In fact, the SOG draws recruits from every SOF unit in the US military, including the SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, and MARSOC. So if you think any of these units are tough, then the SOG is clearly another cut above, which also means they're even more classified. Basically, the SOG is the CIA's paramilitary arm, which is part of the highly classified elite group known as the SAD, or Special Activities Division. And as you can probably tell from their name, the role of the SAD is to step in and solve delicate problems that the US government would rather not be associated with. In other words, the SAD is the part of the CIA which carries out the sort of Black Ops missions that we only ever really hear about in movies and video games. And the SOG are basically the sharp end of their spear, carrying out arguably the most dangerous and delicate special operations missions in the world. Now, apart from that, we don't really know a lot about their activities or their organisation because obviously it's all classified. But what we do know is that they're under the direct command of the President of the United States and the NSC. We also know that the role of the SOG covers the entire spectrum of US military special operations because, like I said, they recruit from all branches. But clearly the focus of this unit is on clandestine missions, which could range from assassinations to sabotage and even the training of local friendly forces. The big difference between the SOG and other similar units is, like I said, the fact that they carry out missions that the US government doesn't want to be linked to. And this basically means they don't wear any kind of uniform or identification in the fields, and they may even be required to wear enemy uniforms. What this means is that if they get captured by enemy forces, they aren't covered by the Geneva Convention, and they may even be executed as spies. And we know that this has happened in the past because the majority of agents on the CIA's Memorial Wall at Langley, Virginia, were members of the SOG. Now, like I said, we don't really know a lot about the organisation of the SOG, but it's generally assumed that the unit is made up of at least a few hundred members. And like I said, recruits can be pulled from any part of the US military, but generally speaking, most come from JSOC units or from within the agency itself. In addition to their regular unit selection process, to join the SOG, they're also required to pass further CIA training called the Clandestine Service Trainee Program. And if and when they actually graduate from this program, they then go on to officially be known by the rather simple and nondescript title of Paramilitary Operations Officer. Another important thing to mention here is that due to the covert nature of their missions, they don't operate with other services and provide much of their own support. For example, unlike other SOF units, rather than working with the helicopters and crew of the 160th SAW, they probably just recruit from the unit instead. It's impossible to know exactly what sort of assets they do have on hand, but it's safe to say that they could field just about anything, which kind of makes them their own self-contained covert army, which obviously is well beyond the scope of even the Tier 1 US SOF units. Now, speaking of SOG's assets, well, as for my loadout, as you can see, I decided to run with the RPK-74, which you might be thinking doesn't really make sense. But that's because the SOG are usually sent in behind enemy lines, and they use whatever weapons they can find locally to blend in with enemy forces. For the same reason, I decided to run with the M1911, which is one of the oldest and most common pistols in-game, and to round out the loadout, I went with the C4 and Claymores. So all in all, I think this was a pretty decent insurgent-style loadout. and I think it would be more or less similar to what the SOG would use in places like the Middle East. As for attachments, well, I didn't run with anything on either gun except for the Cobra sight and the bipod on the RPK. And that's obviously because on the modern battlefield, especially in the Middle East, US forces are going to face off against fairly basic weaponry. Even the Cobra sight would be a luxury for most countries using a gun like the RPK, but that being said, the SOG could potentially use anything. And considering a game like Insurgency has the Cobra sight for AK weapons, I figure what the hell, it may not be 100% accurate, but at least it's good enough. Now, as for how this setup performed in-game, well, in a nutshell, it wasn't that great because the RPK isn't very good in head-to-head gunfights. And that's because even though it deals above average damage at close range, it only fires at a super slow 600 RPM. It also has only a 41 round capacity, which means it's not as good for suppressing targets or flanking as a gun like the M249. But that being said, it is a bit more accurate on the move and it does reload pretty quickly, so in a sense you can kind of use it a bit more like an AR. The problem is, with such a slow rate of fire, it's not a very good substitute for most ARs, and you'll need to hang back a bit if you want to stay alive. And the M1911 doesn't really help make up for this either, because of all the semi-auto pistols, it's probably the most suited for long range. Also, the C4 and the Claymores are fairly close range gadgets, so on most maps I found I hardly got a chance to use them. And considering I picked them over the ammo box, I found I was running out of ammo quite a bit as well, which isn't good when you're trying to play passively. So all in all, this isn't a bad loadout in terms of the way it looks and sounds, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't work that well in-game. And I think to really make it work, you'd want to use a faster firing pistol, and definitely make sure you take the ammo box. That's not to say that any of this gear isn't decent though, and in fact a lot of the people I was playing with were telling me how much they love the RPK. And I feel the same way about the M1911, but the problem is, the guns and the gadgets just don't gel together in this particular loadout. So if you like the theme, then definitely give it a go, and if you get the chance, make sure you do some reading up on the SOG. To be honest, I had no idea they even existed before I made this video, and it's just a shame there isn't more info out there. Also, I should mention that if you want to try this loadout in other Battlefield games, don't forget you can pretty much sub in the AKM or the AK-74 as well. And that's because they're all more or less based on the same design as the RPK, and that means they look just as legit when you're running with any sort of insurgency theme. But anyway guys, that just about wraps up this loadout, so let me know what you think in the comment section below, and as always, if you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Also check out the links if you want to see any more of my videos, or if you want to support my channel on Patreon, and until next time, see you later, and have a good one.